characterized by nonviolence. But that's not to say that at the same time they weren't heavily armed. Particularly Martin Luther King had an entire bastion of arms that he kept, and it was very necessary. There were attacks on all civil rights leaders during this period of time, and in fact, de facto, they had a very heavily armed presence, normally at Martin Luther King's house, where he would post 1 or 2 armed guards and have a complete armory of weapons that he let white reporters see. It wasn't a great secret, and it was very necessary for immediate protection. So during this period of time, this whole emphasis on nonviolence doesn't take account of the fact that African Americans were extraordinarily well armed. We can also look at the contrasting views of Robert F.Williams, who did not espouse the nonviolence that Martin Luther King and other African American leaders, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and the Southern Leadership Conference on Civil Rights, and these other various organizations, this sort of nonviolence that they espoused were not espoused by everybody. And Robert F. Williams wrote Negroes with Guns about his experiences in a southern town. He was an African-American ex-soldier who came back determined not to take the kind of rubbish that African-Americans had taken before the war, and who kept several weapons at any given time. And as he points out, when the Ku Klux Klan confronted him, 5 African Americans with guns confronted them back, and suddenly the Ku Klux Klan faded. They were unwilling, as he made the point, to trade shots because they felt that African Americans' lives were not as valuable as theirs. So they weren't going to trade shots with people who they didn't have any respect for their lives because their lives were cheaper than the whites. And so therefore it's a very good idea in that you can defend yourself against people, the elite, and the elite will not be willing to bully you in the same way if they feel that you will fight back. And in his efforts to desegregate a swimming pool, he did very, very well and defended himself. It's a fascinating book, well worth reading if you ever get the chance, just for the amusing stories as much as anything. He talks about a situation whereby he's surrounded by a white mob, and where he gets out of the car and armed with a rifle and a pistol,